So, Lone Rider here, and today I actually took this thing out for a ride, but I wasn't hitting the local trails at Lewis Morris, which aren't really so local. They require a long ride, or a 40-minute drive minimum, if no traffic. Instead, because I didn't feel like going on that kind of a drive to get to where I wanted to ride my bike, I looked around for someplace local, and all I had was the dirt roads by the power lines. I rode there. And it wasn't ideal. It's been dry for a few days, but there was still enough rain in recent weeks that there were sections where I had to throw the thing on my shoulder and walk around mud mires. And, one case I almost lost a shoe because of this quicksand-like mud that was sucking at my feet. It was really kind of lackluster. And it was kind of funny because on my way back out of the woods, I rode past, I went past on the other side of the river the proper trails, the actual trails, which of course have a little sign that says no bikes. Never used to, right? We were totally allowed to ride there until a few years ago, when after 20 years of the Union County's ban on mountain biking being just about watching, they decided to arbitrarily expand it to every park in the county for absolutely no reason. And this, of course, has no more validity than the actual ban on mountain biking at Washington itself, but unfortunately it is what it is. There's a sign there, and it's, I guess, theoretically enforced. I don't imagine anybody cares, but the sign's there. And I remember noticing the sign as I rode past, and I said to myself, okay, because you people don't want me to ride there, I have to ride on the other side of the river where there aren't any proper trails, just a dirt road by the power lines. And I end up wading through mud and muck and all kinds of nasty stuff. And I remember thinking to myself, this is not how you engender respect for the process, for the government, for the rules, as it were, right? When those rules are known to be bogus, when they're known to be based on, no legitimate argument or fact or documentation of a problem that they're trying to address, when they're known to simply take normal everyday behavior and try and make that against the rules, then normal everyday people are going to have a lack of respect for those rules. And what I've seen as I've gotten older, on both this issue of bike access here in Union County, as well as other issues, ranging from gun control to healthcare to taxes to whatever, is that the tendency seems to be for the government to take a particular tact. They take a normal everyday activity and they decide that they're going to categorize it as bad and therefore forbid it and penalize people who engage in it. But the activity is still normal. It's still a normal everyday thing for the vast majority of people. And my problem with this is, what this results in is a split, a schism, a dichotomy between what the rules say and what everybody just kind of knows is right. And, when you, not for nothing, but if you outlaw normal everyday activity, you shouldn't be surprised to find yourself surrounded by normal everyday people who've become outlaws. Or conversely, if you decide to use the power of the government to declare that certain things are forbidden, when there's absolutely no reason for them to be, because they're just normal everyday things that people do as a matter of course and don't hurt anybody, don't be surprised if people lose respect for that law, or for that rule, or for that whatever. And of course, in the case of the mountain bike prohibition, it's not even a law. It was created by a bunch of the unelected in a back room, according to the government's own admission and Open Public Record Act responses. But the point is, at the end of the day, whether it's an extralegal ban or a ban that's properly based on legislation, if what it targets for prohibition are normal everyday activities, don't be surprised if normal everyday people have complete and total contempt for that ban, right? They may not violate it willy-nilly. They may not choose to continue with the activity if they're faced with the risk of a possible penalty, but they're not going to have any respect for the government that told them they couldn't do this. every time I hear somebody, whether it's some, silk-suited so-and-so on TV talking about common sense gun laws, or whether it's somebody talking about, Obamacare or tax policy, or whether it's me riding past the local trails that I used to use every week for much of my life, and I see a sign that tells me that I'm forbidden there now. I don't think, oh well, that's the rule and I should respect it. I think I spit on that. I think I have no respect for that. It disgusts me. It revolts me. It makes me say to myself, I have the deepest lack of respect for that policy and for those people who are promoting it and for those people who have put it into effect. And if what you want to do is bring people together and to encourage everybody working together and trying to solve problems and get involved in their government and respect the rules, then the last thing you want to do is have those rules actively work to undermine people's respect for them. But when what you do is try and criminalize everyday normal activities and make everyday normal people criminals, essentially, that's what you're doing. You're undermining respect for the rules, and by extension for the processes that lead to them. Now, in some cases, like with the mountain bike policy, it's not actually legislation, so you can't really say, well, you're undermining respect for the proper functions of government, because it's not the proper functions of government for a bunch of unelected goons to get together behind closed doors and raise their hands and say, by the power of Grayskull, I declare this is illegal. That's fiat government. That's not how we're supposed to have government in this country. But generally speaking, the point is when you target for prohibition innocuous things, whether it's trying to criminalize somebody's right to bear arms, whether it's trying to criminalize private health insurance, whether it's trying to make certain things against the law or prohibited, when it's telling people they can't ride their bike in a friggin' park, right? So that instead they have to go across the river where there isn't a proper trail and ride through quicksand and muck on a dirt road. You know what? I no longer have respect, not only for the rule, but for the people and the processes involved with creating it. I have complete and utter contempt for them. And every time I see one of these things, whether it's some silk-suited so-and-so talking about, gun control or healthcare, or whether it's, I'm riding my bike past a trail that I used to use all the time and that I'm now forbidden from because some jerk put a sign there, I want to spit on that sign. I have absolutely no respect for it, or the rule that it represents, or the people that led to it being there. Because they've actively done everything they can to undermine my respect for the rule and the processes behind it. Why? Because they're going after ordinary, everyday things that don't hurt anybody. And they're trying to basically say just living your life is a crime. And in my opinion, that is the lowest of the low things you can do. So, hey, if you wonder why people are skeptical, if you wonder why people maybe don't take you seriously, if you wonder why people maybe sit there and say to themselves, that person's full of so-and-so, maybe it's because of what you're doing. Maybe it's because you're trying to criminalize them living their life. Maybe it's because you're trying to make it like, well, just doing everyday normal things is suddenly cause for the government to get involved with telling people they can't. And the question I ask is, whenever somebody comes up and says you shouldn't be allowed to do this, whether it's, again, people owning a firearm, people having private health insurance, people riding their friggin' bicycle, and somebody says you shouldn't be allowed to do this, it should be banned. My question is, why? And nobody has a really good answer to that. So instead, their response is, well, if you do it, you'll get in trouble. Way to go. Way to go. Good way to alienate just about every reasonable person out there, starting with me.